there was, some issues with, the word wholesaling. It's kind of like a turn off for a lot of realtors. And so
Yeah.
when I would try to tell them like, oh yeah, I'm going to sign this. And I even use the words that you would say, like a business entity, buyer and entity. So they would still be like, okay, well, let me talk to a seller. And then they would never text me back.
Today, we're talking to Alanis, who is a young real estate investor who wants to wholesale in order to get the funds up to house hack, lower her living expenses, and get on the path to financial freedom. She is working hard. She is putting in a lot of time, but in this episode, we go through what are the things that you should be spending your time on and in what order. There are a lot of important questions like what market you're going to invest in, what type of deal you're looking for, and of course, how to analyze those deals. So we go through a bit of my 10-step business plan with Alanis today, but you can get your own copy of that business plan and watch my full breakdown of all 10 steps in a recent episode that I will link down in the description. But before we get into it, it would mean the world to me if you would like this podcast on YouTube or leave a review on your favorite podcast app. It really does help the show to grow and to reach more people who want a true look at how to get started in real estate investing. Thank you for that. I truly appreciate it. And let's get into the show. What interested you in real estate investing and how did you get to the place of scheduling this call with me?
So it started off with my older brother. We've always wanted to, house hack. And so he was like, okay, well, the first step, the way that we can get that money to house hack would be wholesaling. And he kind of introduced me there. I started with like other people on YouTube watching them. And so I would see that. And little by little, the more I watched YouTube videos, the more ads and recommendations came up. And then yours came up. And I really like how you were very like direct and I connected to a lot of what you were saying. So I started watching your show, like YouTube's videos. I started getting more into that. And then I was able to, with a friend, he helped me get the money to be able to be in the program that you had, the 14 days.
Yep.
And so, yeah, that kind of brought me here. So.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I'm happy to have you. I'm happy to get the chance to work with you. And obviously, like, if you watch some of my early videos, I started out with house hacking and wholesaling. So I definitely connect to that being a path that can really work out well. How long have you been thinking about real estate investing? And before joining the boot camp, did you do any, attempt to do any deals ahead of time, or are you really just getting started now?
So I knew about wholesaling about this like for a year already. I kind of did my own research, just kind of found on YouTube whatever I could find and stuff. But I started actually getting into it February. So yeah, before I did try to get like a deal before, I started your program and stuff. I did online market, but there was, some issues with, the word wholesaling. It's kind of like a turn off for a lot of realtors. And so when I would try to tell them like, oh yeah, I'm going to sign this. And I even use the words that you would say, like a business entity, buyer and entity. So they would still be like, okay, well, let me talk to a seller. And then they would never text me back. Right.
Sure.
So a lot of that happened. And then I did try to do some off market, but I noticed that my struggle right now is being confident in my numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I would give them an offer too high, and then I couldn't find a buyer to finish that deal.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, cool. So you've got some good experience, but you're kind of still towards the beginning. So you can really just think about what are those steps that you need to take to really get started. How much of the 14 days in the boot camp have you had the chance to go through yet?
I went through everything. I looked at everything. And honestly, yeah, it was nice that you kind of gave a bit of everything. I really like the house hacking information. I like the flipping information. So I was able to learn a little bit from other things that I didn't think I needed.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. So something that I'd love to walk through is like, now that you have the basic understanding, and of course you can always go back into the boot camp and review how to run the numbers. We do the live calls, you can continue to join those. But I really want to think about building out your specific business plan for your life and your skill set and things of that nature. That said, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Like, what do you do for work? Where in the country do you live? And just generally, why do you think that wholesaling would be a good fit for you?
Right. So I live in California, which is like up in the mountains right here. And then I just kind of work a fast food right now just to help out financially with my family. I think wholesaling, I did see other programs. I did speak, like I told you, with other people. And I think the more that I get into this, the more I realize I really like real estate. I think everything about it is very interesting to me. I love how you can do like creative financing and all these other methods, like everything about the market. It interests me. The
Hmm.
reason I would choose wholesaling is because it kind of just for me is like the beginning, just a first step, kind of just to get myself into the market, get into investing in a way that I don't have to put my own money, it's less risk. And it does put in more work, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with putting in the work. I spoke to someone else recently and I was telling them that I do 2 hours before my work and then 2 hours after my work. And that I usually do that five times a week. So I'm doing like 20 hours a week.
Great.
And they asked me like, why do you think, you haven't got a deal if you're putting in the work? And I told them, I was like, it doesn't matter how much I dig if I'm digging in the wrong place. So I
Mm,
feel like that's where I'm at right now, where I have the work, like I have the motivation to do it. I just need a little bit of push in the right direction.
right. Yeah, I like that analogy. I like that analogy a lot. And I like that you're putting in the work because there's so many people who are like, oh, I've done 2 hours this month, right? And it's like, well, you know, I can't, there's not much I can do to help you. But if you're putting in the time, you're putting in the work, we can absolutely find out how to put that in the right direction, like you said. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing during that time when you're like, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm working on real estate. What are some of the activities you're doing?
So since I tried doing my area, but I wanted to work more in Alabama. I felt like that was a good virtual place to work on. So they're obviously 2 hours ahead of me. So in the mornings, I would first start off with doing on market because I felt at first I was doing off market, but of course I wasn't getting a lot of calls. And I watched one of your videos and I decided to try on market. So the 2 hours in the beginning was talking to realtors and just working on property. And then the 2 hours in the afternoon, I was talking to cash buyers, trying to get my list. That way, if I did find a deal, I already had people that were interested in it.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. I think let's walk through kind of, I have this 10-step business plan and you already have access to it, but I'll send it to you again. But let's kind of walk through maybe the first 2 or 3 steps of building out your custom business plan to help you figure out what are the things that you need to be doing during that time. I think first and foremost, what's going to be super important for you, especially if you're wholesaling virtually, is what the first step in the business plan is, which is, do you really know how to recognize a good deal? When we think about the first step in the business plan, when we think about the first step in putting together your real estate investing business, it's all about recognizing a good deal. And one of the key issues that I'm seeing pop up over and over again is that everyone talks about finding distressed properties, distressed properties, distressed properties, which is a huge part of it. But not only do you need to know how to recognize distress, you also need to recognize investor activity. If you find a distressed house at the bottom of the ocean, no one's buying it because there are no investors investing down there. And I get that that's an extreme example, but I find so many new investors put a ton of time into finding distress, but they don't have any confirmation that investors are actually buying deals in that area. And then they get stuck with a property that they can't move. And so when you're coming across properties, whether they be on market or off market, what are the characteristics that like stand out to you? Like, yeah, that's a good deal. I should take the next step on it.
Well, when I look at properties, obviously, we have to see first the way that I kind of was taught by like other people were to see what is the median home price of the area that you're looking for. And so I would put like in my filters anything below that. Also, equity, make sure that it has enough equity where I can go and sell it out. And so I'm doing those filters, mostly just single homes, residential individuals, And I try for on market, it's kind of those. And then as a property itself, I'm looking for like anything that says as is, investor special, anything that kind
Yeah.
of just tells me that the realtor knows this is going to be a quick cash deal type of stuff. And then as in the property itself, I'm looking for anything that might be distressed or outdated. If it is a bit outdated, I'll look at, the saves and views on Zillow. So I
Mm-hmm.
usually do like a 10% ratio. So if there's like 100 views, if there's 10 saved, then it's like a good deal. And I kind of look into that more. That's kind of the small things that I see.
Okay, interesting. I haven't heard about that saves to views ratio, but I like how creative you're being to try to see like how much interest does this property actually have. I think that's really smart. One of the common mistakes, and I was just talking to another student on another episode about a lot of us have a really good idea to focus on distress, like you said, right? So are these properties distressed? Do they need repairs? Are they really, really dated? Right? That type of thing is oftentimes going to be really good to look at. But we also want to make sure we also have the other side of the equation, which is can I find that distressed property in an area where investors are actively buying? Right? Because we can have a distressed property and not have any buyers, right? And we want to make sure that we have both because obviously we're trying to connect the two, whether we're going on market or off market. And
Right.
so, do you have any system yet for making sure that your distressed properties are an area that investors are interested in?
Well, I did see the bonus video in the 14-day program on Propstream that the guest helped us see.
Alanis is referring to a special training that Burton from Propstream did for the members of my 14-day beginners bootcamp, which is my mentorship program to help walk people like Alanis and like you through getting their first deal and getting to a point where they can consistently do deals every single month. So if you'd like to check it out, you can find a link in the description. Spots are limited in each month's bootcamp, and when the enrollment window closes, it is closed for good. So check out that link to see the dates of when we'll next be getting started, and I hope to see you there.
So I did go onto my market and I went and I looked for the pre-foreclosures, and then I looked for the 5 most popular zip codes that had that. And then I went back and also did the cash buyers, in which I was seeing like which 5 zip codes, and the 5 zip codes that I found were the most for pre-foreclosures were also the zip codes in which cash buyers were buying a lot of properties in. And so I was able to get those 5 properties, as well as talking to some cash buyers. I realized that there's some properties in which they don't go because of poverty. And so I also put those in. And so I'm looking at the ones where most cash buyers are at, and then not going for the ones where they won't go for.
Okay, great. Super, super smart. And I love that you use Propstream as a tool for that. Propstream also has that filter where you can select for cash buyers, and then you can look by zip code and see what are the most popular locations that cash buyers are buying in. So those are really good tools. And that's really the first steps, right? So it's like, can you recognize a good deal between is this property distressed or not? And is it in an area where investors are super interested? So I think you're doing really well there. The next step, and I'm looking over here at the business plan, is around choosing your market. And so I'm super interested in how you went from all the way in California to choosing Alabama as a virtual market.
So it started off where I was looking at YouTube videos and, people telling these are the top 10 best markets. And just looking at that, I also joined some wholesaling groups in which I noticed there was a lot of people in Alabama doing deals. And it kind of was just like, well, where I live, it's a small town, and there's like one real estate company, and they control the whole town. I was gonna do Lancaster and Palmdale area, which is a great area that I see, but I just felt for in the beginning I could start off virtually. It's just something that I just decided.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good market, and I kind of just went from there.
Yeah. What's your experience been like? Like, what does that mean to you? It's a good market.
To be a good market, I felt that, I was seeing other people get good deals there. I was seeing that the value of the properties weren't too expensive. I saw that the houses were selling a lot. I spoke with some cash buyers that actually lived in LA, but they would buy properties in Alabama. And they would also tell me that, if I was interested, I I picked a good place. So, yeah.
Gotcha. And I think that it makes sense for a lot of people to wholesale virtually, whether they are like you in a small town or in an expensive area, or for whatever reason they don't, or regulations, right? Like there are certain states that have different regulations. So it absolutely makes sense for some people to wholesale virtually. It does bring in some extra difficulties, as I'm sure you've run into. Have you been able to connect with anyone who actually lives in that market that can help you in terms of being there physically? Other wholesalers, contractors, investor friendly agents, anything like that?
Unfortunately, I haven't looked more into that, so I haven't found anyone. I didn't really have like my nothing in my deals have moved forward enough where I've needed a boots on the ground or a JV type of opportunity. It is something I did want to look into a bit more, but not no.
Not yet. Yeah. Okay, cool. I think that's a good next step for you, is to try to connect with people who are active in the investor community and actually live there. And the first people that I would actually be looking to connect with are other wholesalers. I think that the disposition, so you have two sides of the deal, right? You have the acquisition, which is finding the deal, and then the disposition, which is finding the buyer or whatever you're going to do with the deal after the fact. And I think
Right.
that for you, especially if you're trying to wholesale on market and you're virtual, those two things are a difficult combination, right? Because it's difficult to get buyers into the house. You aren't able to build as much of a rapport with the real estate agent if you can't actually meet them, right? And so they're like, who is this random person from California telling me that they're going to do this deal? And so those two things can be difficult. Having someone, another wholesaler who maybe it's like, we're going to split the work 50-50 and we're going to split the profits 50-50. You might take care of finding the deal, evaluating it, getting it to that position, but they might take care of working with the cash buyers, letting the cash buyers into the house, actually being there on the ground. I think that could be a good option for you. And so I'd start reaching out to wholesalers that you see that are active in the group, that are actually doing deals, and offering them, hey, I have 4 hours a day to help with XYZ, whatever those things that you are skilled in. I would reach out and look to make some connections so that you're not just stuck in California, unable to make anything happen on the ground actually in that market.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that would be a good next step for you, because no matter what market you choose, you have to have some type of competitive advantage there. And there's a small competitive advantage to, it's a low cost market, right? But that's not enough. You're going to have to find some other type of advantage that you can use to help get you deals. And I think having someone there on the ground would be a big help.
Okay.
You mentioned struggling with running your numbers a little bit. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, like I was saying at first, going through your 14-day process, like the program, it did help. It did to be more confident in the fact that, it comps equals confidence,
Yeah.
right? And so I did see that, but before I was having a bit issues where I didn't know, okay, is this comp actually good? Is it bad? And little by little, with the experience, I am getting better, understanding current value and then the ARV as well, and seeing, okay, well, this property doesn't work because it's not fixed up, and then it's not going to give me the actual ARV, but instead the current value. So little by little, I think it's just getting more experience. The more
Yeah.
experience I get, the more confident I'll become in my skills.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think that's another thing to put on your list, is like track the number of properties that you're evaluating. You don't have to only evaluate properties that you're going to make an offer on. Right? I think a lot of people think, oh, if I go through the process and I look at the comps and the ARV, I have to make an offer on this property. And then if they're not ready to make an offer, then they just don't practice, right? So like kind of separate those two.
Right.
And I would say that in addition to connecting with people on the ground, like in that market, is also spending a significant amount of your time practicing evaluating deals and making sure that you can get to an offer price that makes sense. And
Right.
as a member of the community, you can submit deals to me. I'm evaluating deals and posting them, you know, in the Facebook group and whatnot every month. So if you come across a deal that you're like, hey, Lili, can you record yourself analyzing this, and then you want to test against me, that's a really good gauge to just see where you're at. And maybe, you would make one offer for one reason, I would make it for another reason. And then that's a really good practice session.
Okay.
Yep. So I say that would be second. And then third, I want to talk about your on market versus off market decision, because this is a big sticking point. A lot of people like myself try to start on market because it is less expensive, but there's some hurdles there. So I just want to know how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, I did notice that. And that's kind of a little bit what I wanted to talk to you as well, is like, how do I interact with realtors in a way where they know I'm a wholesaler, because I want to be upfront about it, but
Mhm.
they're not, scared that I'm over here trying to take advantage of them or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely agree with you in that my advice to everyone is to always be upfront about what you're going to do with the deal. And I just think that's the best practice. I think that you will run into some agents who are like, nope, I'm not working with a wholesaler. And that's their right, right? That's totally fine. I'm of the belief that there are plenty of deals out there, and your reputation and being honest and doing these things the right way is more important than trying to squeeze out one deal, especially because that agent is a source for deals in the future. And
Right.
so one of the strategies that I always recommend is something that I learned from Jerry Norton on YouTube, and that's his double dip strategy, right? And so it's it's going straight to the listing agent and letting them represent you as well so that they can get both sides of the commission. So that's one way to kind of help with that relationship with real estate agents. The other thing to consider is when you are looking at on market properties and you're looking to wholesale them, we all have to remember that, like, for most of those properties, working with a wholesaler is going to be their last option, right? They're
Right.
ideally going to work with someone who's going to live in the house, because that means that they're typically going to be getting a bank loan. Those are typically the people that are going to be willing to pay more, right? So it's like if they have a choice, they're going to sell to someone who's going to live in it. And then second, if they have a choice, they're going to sell to an investor who has the money themselves, because that's less risky,
Right.
right? And then third, if they can't find those other two, then they may potentially work with a wholesaler. And so your best bet when you're looking on market is not to waste your time on deals that the first or the second person are going to buy. Because if I'm a wholesaler and you're just a home buyer who's going to live in it, and you're offering, let's call it $150,000 for the property, and I'm coming in offering $85,000, no one's going to ever take my deal, right? They are always going
Right.
to go with that home buyer. And so you want to go to properties on market where they don't have those first two options. And that's for reasons such as extreme distress, reasons like it's been sitting on market for a long time, and maybe now the seller is more willing to take a price reduction. But we always want to make sure that we're going after the properties that need a wholesaler to help solve that issue. I'll give you an example. I had a property where, well, I'll give you two examples. Actually, my very first deal was an on market deal. It had been on market for a while, and it was for two reasons. The first reason was that the homeowner had tried to remove one of the pillars in the kitchen to like make a more open floor plan, but that pillar was actually load bearing. And so the whole ceiling was starting to sag, and that property was not going to pass inspection for a home buyer to get a bank loan. right? That needed to be fixed first. And so the seller no longer had the option of selling to a homeowner. So then they went to selling to an investor. They were looking for an investor to buy it. But the person who was living there, she needed a long close. She needed like 90 days to close the deal rather than the typical 30 days because she still had to pack. She was buying a new house with the proceeds, so she needed time to move. And something that was really important to her was she didn't have a moving truck, so she wanted to leave some of the big pieces of furniture that she wasn't, excuse me. So she wanted to leave some of the big pieces of furniture that she wasn't taking with her. She wanted to leave it in the property. And so she had found a little bit of trouble with investors in the sense that they didn't really want to wait 90 days to close, and they weren't too excited about having to get rid of all of her furniture after she moved out. And so the property was sitting on the market for a while. And I came into the real estate agent, and I had the conversation of, hey, I can see that you're struggling to, move this property. If you work with me, I'm unrepresented. You can take both sides of the commission. And I think that I have a buyer who can allow her to stay in the house longer and who can allow her to leave some of her furniture as long as she's willing to accept a little bit less. And we were able to come to a deal that way. And so I say all of that to say, finding those reasons why the wholesaler is the best option, those are the deals that you want to hunt for. And it's going to take longer to find them on market, but that's because it's free, right? There's that trade-off. But does it make sense? And like, you're really hunting for people who really you are their last option.
Yeah. It's going to be like, it's easier, but harder. Like everything's hard, right? Everything's difficult. Everything has its issues. So yeah, if I don't want to spend money, I got to spend time looking for more properties. And I get you. Okay.
Awesome. I think you're on the right track though. What other questions do you have? What do you want to get in? What else do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I did have some questions. Let me see. Oh yeah, I just wanted to ask, like, what are some resources did you use to get, financial literacy, like getting into this and understanding the little things?
Yeah, that's a great question. I read a lot. And at the time when I was first getting into real estate investing, I was playing basketball with the Harlem Globetrotters. And so I had a lot of time either in airports or on planes that I just decided, okay, rather than scrolling through my phone on Twitter for, this hour, 2 hours, I'm going to read. And I think switching some of the time that you're using for other things into reading is very, very helpful. And in every description of my YouTube videos, there's a link to 10 books that I recommend people get started with. The reason I say books is because even though I have a YouTube channel, even though I have a podcast, this is still just a snapshot of what you need to know, right? We can't go through years and years of experience in such a short format. But books are meant to be that long format and walk you through A to Z of a process. And so I would say there's a huge benefit to reading books. More people getting into real estate investing should depend on books as well as podcasts and YouTube videos. So I would go with that. And then also I would consider working for another investor, a more experienced investor. So whether that's in Alabama in your virtual market or in your local market, right? There are people in real estate in your local market, and maybe you can't beat them out, right? They've got a lot of money and time and they do it professionally, but you could potentially work for them, whether that's driving for dollars, making calls for them, managing contractors for them, right? I've got another video that lists a bunch of different side hustles that you could do. And yes, it's for the money to work for them, but it's also, like you said, for the literacy, for learning about the finances, learning about the real estate activities. Just kind of getting next to someone who is already doing it could also really be a big help.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely.
How would you, I know this is a little off topic, but how would you participate effectively in a stock market and be a real estate investor? And how much do they complement each other, would you say?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm definitely not an expert on stocks. The only way that I invest in stocks is by putting a set amount of money each month into an index fund, right? So just a collection of different companies, buying a small share and putting in each month. I don't day trade, right? So I'm not like logging on and thinking this one company is going to go up today or it's going to go down. I heard this analogy the other day. Someone said day trading, just like as an amateur, right? Like from your laptop, is like saying you're going to go play in the NBA and try to score a few buckets, right? Against the absolute best in the world who dedicate all day, every day, their entire lives to it, right?
Right.
There are so many people on Wall Street who professionally pick stocks and invest in the stock market, and even they lose a lot of money doing it. And so that's not a game that I want to play. I just try to use sound financial advice to invest in an index fund every month, even if it's $20, $200, whatever you can, every month, and let that grow over time. I don't look at that as now money. I look at that as 30, 40 years into the future money.
Right.
And then my real estate investing is more for what can I generate today through wholesaling or whatnot. But they are very separate in that sense, in my mind.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last question would be like for me, a lot of this where I've been doing on and off wholesaling and studying and investing in it, how would you tell like a new person, my mind right now is since I haven't gotten a deal, it's time wasted. I'm not doing things right. And I have that like sense of fear that no matter how much I study, I'm doing something wrong because I'm not getting a deal. Like, how would you change that? Or what would you tell me to change that mindset?
I would say, like, you said February is kind of where you really locked in and started this, right?
Yeah. 6 months ago, I tried it, but I had to get a second job. So I kind of stopped. But yeah, February was like, 4 days, 4 hours a day, 5 times a week, sometimes even, 25 hours a week where I was like, okay, I'm going to get into this.
Gotcha. Well, I think one, you ask yourself, am I putting in the work? And you are. The second is like, how long have I been putting in the work? Which is not a ton of time, right? A month is not a ton of time. And so I think you have to be realistic about that. And then 3, define what like small success means. So what are the things before you actually get your first deal that equal success? I would say connecting with somebody boots on the ground. I would say finding a side hustle or another investor that you could potentially work with and learn from and make some extra money from. But defining what are those small things so that you're not always like, everything's a failure if I don't have a deal. There are absolutely successes, on that path. And then another thing that I did, excuse me, was I started my YouTube channel, my real estate journey at the same time. And there's something that happens when our expectation is different than the reality. If I expect to get a deal within my first 10 offers, I'm going to be disappointed if I don't. But if I expect that I won't get a deal until my 100th offer, then I won't be upset after number 10, right? And it's just because my expectations are different. And so when I started my YouTube channel and I started my real estate journey at the same time, I said, I'm not going to quit either one until I make 100 videos and 100 offers. And it didn't take me that long to get my first deal, but I was less disappointed when my 17th offer got rejected because I was expecting to go to 100 anyway.
Right.
And so kind of changing your expectations, just being like, look, I'm in it for this amount of time or this amount of offers. And I'm going to do everything I can to learn and make adjustments throughout that time. And if at the end of that, I haven't gotten there, then we can reevaluate. But I think allowing yourself to kind of get disappointed at every step is tough to push through.
Right.
Cool. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that was. I think, yeah. I remember because I had friends that also wanted to join me into this, and I told them, and I kind of made like this little paper that was like one more no closer to my goal, and every time we would get a no, I would be like, okay, we'll put it on the list, and we would check it and check it. And I think I should go back to that because like you were saying, yeah, you need 100 no's to get that one yes. And I think I was kind of just belittling the hard work that I'm getting into there. And it does
Yeah.
build up to that.
Yeah, and it can be disappointing along the way, but I think as long as you're continuing to reevaluate, am I, like you said, digging in the right spot? Am I doing kind of the things on your checklist? Reach out to me, right? We can talk about things and make sure you're on the right path. But if you're doing the right things, then you just have to believe in that, and the action and the results will follow.
Thank you.